Our project is now fully set up and we can start working on our lottery test file. I'm going to open up the test file. Now we did delete all the boilerplate code that we had in here before, so we will end up rewriting a little bit of code around the before each statement and some of the require statements at the top. However, this is really a good opportunity for us to review some of the different things that we did with our testing setup. So let's get started. At the very top, we'll first start off by requiring in the assert library. You'll recall that this is a helper library that is a part of the Node standard library. So we did not have to install any assert module or anything like that. On the next line, we will require in ganache from ganache CLI. Ganache is going to be our local test network that only gets created when we start running our tests. By just requiring it into this file, it automatically boots up the local test network. So we don't have to do any other special setup for it. Then we can require in web3. Remember that when we first require web3, we are requiring in the constructor function. So we use the capital W here. Then after that, we can set up our instance of web3 with new web3 ganache.provider. Don't forget that the provider is essentially a replaceable little block that we stick into the web3 library. The provider is what allows us to connect to any given network. So whenever we are using web3 with ganache, we pass in the ganache provider. As soon as we start to move over to the browser, or as soon as we start to deploy our contract to a test network, we will replace this provider with whatever provider is appropriate. And we've seen some examples of that already. Next, we can require in our interface, which is the ABI of our contract, and the bytecode, which is the raw compiled contract from our compile file. So we'll say const interface and bytecode is going to come from ... compile, like so. Remember that we are using the curly braces here because we are requiring in an object that has the interface and bytecode properties. Next, we're going to declare two local variables. One is going to serve as holding our instance of our contract, and the other is going to hold a list of all the different accounts that are automatically generated and unlocked for us as a part of the Ganache CLI. So we'll say let lottery and let accounts. Then after that, we'll set up our before each statement that will attempt to deploy our contract and also get a list of all of our accounts. So I'll say before each. The function that we're going to pass to before each is going to have some asynchronous code inside of it. So I'll say async, and then I'll put my arrow function. Then inside of here, we're going to immediately reassign a value to the accounts variable. So I'll say accounts is await, and then we need to get a list of accounts, and we're going to use web3 for that. So we'll say web3 will access the Ethereum module and then get accounts, like so. And then just one more thing, we also need to take care of deploying an instance of our lottery contract. So I'll say lottery will be await new web3.eth.contract. Remember that contract has a capital C, and then we'll pass in our interface after we parse it from JSON. So we'll say json.parse interface, and then we'll chain on our deploy statement. That's going to take in our raw compiled contract, which is the bytecode. And then we'll also send that off as a transaction to the local test network. And we need to specify the account that we're going to attempt to use for the deployment. So we'll say from the first account in that accounts array, and we'll also specify our gas as 1 million as a string. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like so. And of course, we don't want to include the commas, so we'll take those out. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's all of our boilerplate. Hopefully that was a good little reminder. So let's pause here and continue in the next video.